All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the SALTovation podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
And so, you've had an extensive career in tax that eventually led you to IPT. Can you share with us what drew you into the tax field initially and then how you ended up at IPT?
Yeah, love to. I'll try to give you the abbreviated version because it's quite lengthy, but I think everybody can relate to that. So, I originally was in property tax. That's how I got started. And like a lot of folks in property tax, you don't leave college saying, I'm going to go into property tax. You kind of fall
No.
into it. And then a lot of people in property tax stay in property tax. I think a lot of folks say, no, I'm going to give it a whirl, see what it's like, and then I'm going to get out of it. But they don't. They stay with it. So when I graduated from college, I had a degree in finance and minors in economics and real estate. And I was going to set the world on fire being a real estate developer. I wanted to get into real estate development. Two big problems at the time: double-digit inflation and double-digit interest rates. So the real estate development market was just dead. There was nothing happening there. And so a good friend of mine said, if you really want to do something real estate related, you have to get into appraisal because that'll give you a good background and valuation of property. So I thought, yeah, that sounds good. Problem was, I didn't have any education or experience in appraisal, but I was able to find what's like an analyst position. They called it appraiser, but it was an analyst position with a law firm in Minneapolis. That part of their practice was property tax appeals. I didn't know anything about property tax appeals. I was like most people. I just figured, well, you just pay your property taxes, right? And so I went there thinking, well, I'll just do this for a couple of years and get a little more experience and move on to something else. Well, a couple of years ended into 5 years, and then I went to do some consulting with a national firm for 3 years, and then decided that got married and kids were coming along. Decided I needed something a little more stable, and so I landed a job with a food manufacturer in Minneapolis in corporate tax management. So, and I can say it was a Pillsbury company, which was owned by it's now called Diageo, and so they own Pillsbury and they own Burger King and they own Prohibition. So they had a lot of companies. It gave me a lot of exposures to property tax across from manufacturing to retail to restaurants. So it was a really good exposure. It was a good transition for me, and I just stayed with that until Pillsbury was acquired by General Mills, and then I made the transfer to General Mills. And so throughout that, I was probably about 20 to 25 years in the corporate tax management side of things. And along the way, I came across IPT. So when I went to Pillsbury, I'd only done real estate appeals. I hadn't done any personal property. And now I needed to get educated in personal property. So I turned to IPT, took the course. Just loved the course, loved the organization. Some of the instructors at that time were about my age. We became good friends. We're still good friends to this day. And I just started doing more and more with IPT. I was on committees, I was on schools, and then I was on the board for a number of years. And then I was an officer, was elected officer, second vice president, and first vice president, and I was on track to be president. Along the way, my job at General Mills got eliminated, and about 6 months later, the executive director at IPT said he was going to step down. So it was like, an opportunity. And I thought, well, why not give it a whirl? I mean, at the time, I was 50-some years old. Nobody was going to hire a corporate property tax manager at that point. So this IPT seemed, well, I was, well-versed in the organization. I've been very active with it. And so I applied. I went through the selection process, interviewed with the selection committee, and interviewed with the board, which was a little funny because I was on the board at the time.
Right.
And I interviewed with the very people who are my colleagues.
Yeah.
So, and they selected me, and I'm very grateful and very honored that they did that. So, in a very short, in a nutshell version, that's how I got involved with IPT, and that's
How interesting. Because I go back to who is it that was the original IPT executive director? Billy, is it Billy?
Yeah, Billy Cook. Well, Billy wasn't the first, but he was the second.
Okay.
But he was the longest. He was 22 years in that position.
Yeah. So that's probably when I started with IPT, was Billy was still in charge.
Right. And then Kaz Vickers came along, and Kaz very well.
Yes.
Yeah. And he was very short tenure, 3 years. And then
that was a disappointment because I thought he was phenomenal, but he had a life pivot, right? So I think that's why he decided to step down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I enjoyed working with Cass when I was on the board, and it was really nice to follow him in that role.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe there's a greater intervention here that's guiding my path.
Well, how interesting that your job will be eliminated, though. I mean, it's so important. Why would they not think they needed you? That
Well,
surprises me.
yeah, at the time there was this massive job cuts across the board, and they don't
Mm,
care about what role you're in, and it always surprises me, not just the company that I was at, but other companies that make cuts in tax departments
I
because
know.
those folks are providing some of the greatest value to the organization.
Yes, yes, yes. Could not agree more. The money. That's why I've never gone into industry, frankly, because I'm a money maker, right? I'm an advocate and I am going to save you money by being knowledgeable about all the issues and I'm going to pay for my salary way more than you pay me. But there's something about that where we're not valued in industry. We are and then we aren't. And it's like, that's part of your bottom line. Tax. Get rid of
Right.
it.
Yeah,
Or what
yeah, and specifically with property tax, it's sort of a
Wow.
double-edged sword because
Yes.
sometimes they just leave you alone, thinking, "I don't know what you do, but you add value,"
Correct.
and sometimes it's like, "I don't know what you do, so I'm going to get rid of you," and that's the end of it. So
Yes. No, we sort of operate in an island, which is, I think, part of what we've attracted in our team is people who care about this passionately, and we work with each other, so we're kind of allies. Because in industry, people are like, "What tax?" But you're like, "It's important,"
yeah,
and but yet it's sort of like nobody thinks about it, and only large companies can have people like you. But that is just walking away from money to not have you be a
yeah,
part of the team anymore, and your institutional knowledge
yeah,
about the assets. Wow. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's an
or you
interesting
see the
culture in America. We're anti-tax, but let's not keep the tax people around.
yeah, exactly.
well, or I've seen the contrary, right? Where tax we typically work in arrears, right? So we're, recording around, the fall tax extended deadline,
Hmm.
doing stuff for, generally calendar year 2023, 10 months out, but doing things simultaneously, right? Audits are 3 years ago. And so I've had friends who have been in internal tax, but once everyone else was released, tax was the last one standing because they had open audits, they had open litigation, and they're like, we can't get rid of these people. We have to continue to pay them because
Who's going to
they're
handle
the
it?
ones with the institutional knowledge, right? And we
Yeah.
can't just, this this case is 8 years old, right? But, you know, it's only in the courts now. So it's interesting the dichotomy of how that can be kind of perceived.
Yeah.
Um, but also, Chris, love that, it's those relationships, right? When you went to Pillsbury, it's like, I need a network, I need resources, I need help. And that's
Right.
kind of what kept you, right? Creating the friendships and kind of what brought you to where you are today. And as we talk to people kind of across accounting and taxes, that's always been kind of the underlying theme
Hmm.
of the relationships and really what keeps us going and keeps us being good at what we do. So, that's great to hear you kind of, you know, what brought you to your current position. And so with that, one, I guess for our listeners, what does IPT stand for? Because we've just been talking in acronyms. I don't think
Yeah.
we've actually said it. Um, but how is IPT structured and what is the mission um, of the organization?
All right. So the easy answer is IPT stands for Institute for Professionals in Taxation. So it originally started out as the Institute of Property Taxation.
That's what I thought. Yes. That's the impetus of it was property taxes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and as the organization grew and brought in sales and use tax and state income tax, obviously the name Institute for Property Taxation didn't fit across the board. It didn't fully
Mm-mm.
represent the membership. So trying to keep with the IPT, insignia, of course, changed it to Institute for Professionals in Taxation.
Interesting.
That was
I
the
knew
change.
that. I mean, I go back a ways, not as far as the organization, but Bob Atkinson was my boss at Deloitte, and he's the one who said I should get involved. And that was, golly, 20, 30, almost not maybe close to 30 years ago. So a long time ago. And he said, if you want, I'm a lawyer and a CPA. So he said, you can go to the ABIPT and get duly certified. And this is what you should do. And he was a president of the organization at one
Yeah,
point. And he
yeah.
was a sales tax guy, but I think he was property tax too, because he was Sears.
Oh,
Sears
yeah,
and
of course.
Roebuck. He worked at
Yeah,
Sears with a lot
yeah,
of stores and,
yeah,
no longer a relevant entity. But I love the Sears catalog. That was
yeah.
Amazon in the day.
We're dating
So,
ourselves, Judy, by talking about the
right?
Sears
Black and
catalog.
white catalog. I would, you
Yeah,
didn't even have sticky notes then. You just
yeah,
circled it. You're like, I want
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember that well,
Kind of
especially
funny.
when the Christmas catalog came out. That was a treasure.
Oh, I was like, ah! Yeah.
I did that too, and now Amazon sends a Christmas catalog. Amazon sends a holiday catalog. It showed up last week, so you have plenty of
Ah,
purchasing time, 2 months ahead of time, but as we digress,
yes.
and so what is the mission and kind of the founding kind of principles of why IPT exists?
So let me answer the second part of your question that you had originally. How are we structured? So IPT is structured as a 501c3. So we're a not-for-profit organization committed
Mm.
to education. All right, that differentiates us from some of the other folks.
Like a
And
C6 or something, which is an advocacy group or a lobbying group or something, or professional
exactly,
organization. Yeah. Okay.
yep, exactly. So as a C3, we can only do education. So in order to maintain that tax exempt status, we can only do education. We can't do advocacy. We can't do lobbying.
Ah, so I didn't realize that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Right,
Okay.
right. So, and so our mission, Meredith, is that we provide broad-based education across the four disciplines in IPT. So it's property tax, it's sales and use tax, it's state income tax, and it's credits and incentives. So by being broad-based, we provide education from the very basic introductory level to advanced schools to our symposiums and then our annual conference across all four disciplines.
Credits and incentives, property tax, income tax, and sales tax, but we still have VAT. We've had a little bit of VAT, but that it's
Yeah,
not that. Is
it
it not
hasn't.
that concentrated? Because I've been to some VAT things over the years.
Well, as a matter of fact, we've had a VAT symposium for a number of years.
Yeah.
It's typically followed our sales tax symposium because it just made sense,
Yeah.
and it still does make sense that you follow up your sales tax with the VAT because people are there for sales tax; they can go right to that.
Yep.
But but this year we provided a VAT school. It's the
Yeah.
first time we've done a
Yeah.
VAT school, and
Right.
had overwhelmingly reception to it, success and well received, I should say, to
Okay.
the school. Yeah, I mean,
I know I
I
thought
think
about sending someone to that. We are getting those issues because with, internet, there are no walls, there are no borders. Like people can sell anywhere to anyone. We just talked to a potential client from the UK selling across Europe and of course selling to the American market. What do? Right? We got VAT issues, we have a UK entity, we have treaty, we have crazy stuff, right? And we want to collect US sales tax. Like, how do you do that? The boundaries of business have been eroded,
right.
which
Couldn't
opens
agree
us
more.
the VAT issue for people in the transaction world because we have a transaction. How do we manage it? So that's very interesting. We've more that I've seen us morphing. I just didn't know how intentionally that was, how big
Yeah.
a leg of the stool that's going to become.
Right, exactly. So we'll offer the VAT school again, and
Okay.
kind of gauge that to see how it goes. But I think there's very very promising future for VAT within our organization. So I could see that being our fifth discipline someday.
Yeah. How do you decide that will officially become so? I mean, how did this morph? Because I feel like it's been trickling until we had the school.
Yeah, it's got to establish itself as
Okay.
something that's consistent year in and year out. And I think it will establish that itself. I say, give it a couple of years with the school and the
Okay.
symposium, and then I think it makes more sense to create a separate discipline within
Okay.
VAT.
Okay. Okay.
These are things that never happen overnight, of course. They have to evolve.
Yeah, and you have to see what the constituency is, but it's so imperative for the younger generation to empower them with information as we're morphing off into the legacy of our careers. Like, how are we going to get the younger generation engaged? Like you said, people don't even think about this. I have a law degree, a master's of tax, never took a state and local class, fell into this career myself,
Yeah,
and it interested me. I mean, everyone we talked to, multi-state tax commission people, Jeanette Lohman, I could give you the list. Like nobody started out being a state and local person.
right.
And then we
Except
liked
for
it.
me, 'cause I'm the weirdo.
That's right, you did.
I did.
I forgot about
So,
that.
I'm
Okay.
but some of that was also opportunity, right?
Ugh.
I knew I was gonna be an accountant in high school. I took the accounting class in high school, declared it as my major in undergrad, and then the opportunity came up, right? My grandfather was a CPA, my brother worked in state and local tax, and I'm a SALT nepo baby. My brother threw my name in the ring for an internship when I was a junior in college, and I was like, I want to work. I don't care where. I don't want to do audit. I want to do tax. Don't care where. Don't care how. And he's like, well, this is what we need. And so that was, almost, I mean, that was almost 20 summers ago. And
And you're kind of unusual, I
stayed in it,
feel
loved
like,
it.
with people like Chris. It's like I feel like we're all sort of fell into it, and then like this is actually kind of a cool area because I started out as general federal tax practitioner, and I thought, why am I doing this? I want to ski. I live in Colorado. I don't want to work every weekend, and I'll be darned if I want to work Labor Day. I fundamentally have a problem with that. But I'd rather be busy on the 20th of every month. What am I thinking with a monthly requirement? But I don't know. The web was weaved, and there you go. I'm caught in it.
And so we've thrown out some of the kind of like various educational tracks. So the symposium, the school, the annual conference, kind of how does, excuse me, how does IPT educate? What kind of programs do they offer? And what are like the differences between, the symposium, the school, the annual conference? Can you talk through some of the kind of just gatherings that occur?
Yeah. So the schools are established to provide tax management skills to its attendees. So if you're brand new, and we see that a lot in property tax and sales tax, people are just thrown into it, saying, "Okay, now you're going to do property tax, now you're going to do sales tax," and they don't have any experience. So our basic schools, our entry level schools, provide them with that very broad based education, if you will. And then we have advanced schools that capitalize on top of the teachings of the prior schools. So that's sort of your tax management base, if you will, in terms of education. And then the symposiums, they're all discipline specific, right? So sales tax only has sales tax topics, property tax only has property tax topics, and each of those five disciplines, and I throw BAD in there because it's a separate symposium. Those are specific to those disciplines. So that's where you're going to get sort of your advanced education, if you will. And then our annual conference is the one that brings all those disciplines together. So if you're somebody that, let's say, you primarily do property tax, but you dabble a little bit in sales tax, you do some state income tax or credits and stuff, you can go to the conference. And yeah, you can pick up your basic property tax education, but you can also go to these breakout sessions in sales tax and credits incentives and state income tax. So it gives you an opportunity to cover off on everything. So that's sort of generally how we're structured with our programs. We also do as Judy knows, we do the ABA. So we partner with ABA on that. And those are legal seminars. That's a day and a half session each of three disciplines: state income tax, sales, and then property. So, and that's more legal based, but it's not exclusive to attorneys. We do have a lot of people who are not attorneys that attend those sessions because they're very informative
Yeah.
on what's happening across the country.
And the cases that are going to impact taxpayers. It's such a big deal. Like what's coming down the pipe, what industry will be hit next, basically
Yeah,
by the
right.
sweatshop. I mean, I remember going to the Alabama. It was Joe from Alabama and the guy who represented Overstock, the lawyer. I think he represented Overstock, talking about the Wayfair decision, stare decisis. I remember sitting there at that luncheon thinking, I don't know. I think the Wayfair thing's going to win. In other words, South Dakota's going to win. And they did because the internet has changed the way business is going. And that tax is not getting in the coffers of state governments, too many trillions of dollars. And that's what happened. So I remember thinking, oh, this is amazing. We have these people sitting at the table. We get to talk to them. Right. Yeah. And also it's interesting that those companies took those cases forward. Obviously it was intentional because no offense, but 800,000 people live in South Dakota. It's just not that important as a market, I'm sure, but making the standard for the rest of us to maybe follow suit. So yeah, it was really interesting what we bring to the table in terms of the people litigating the cases. I think is huge. That network is so
Yeah.
important to know how the sausage is getting made across our states.
Right. And you touched on a very good point that at these programs, you have the opportunity to actually meet these people,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not just an attendee there. You can go up to
Mm-hmm.
that person after they're all done and have a conversation with them.
Yep.
And they're always willing to get engaged with the
Mm-hmm.
members. So it's a great opportunity for not just, general networking, but also to meet these decision makers, people
Well,
that are
when
involved.
I left the Big Four, I spent 14 years at Deloitte and PwC. And when I left, I went to a regional firm and I was the SALT desk. I needed a network. I could not do it without I could never have done it without IPT. You're a godsend to me as a program that doesn't have a Washington national desk, doesn't have a Michigan desk. I called my IPT brethren and they helped me. I mean, it's a wonderful network of humans that are connected in their industries amongst their states that are a wildly breadth of knowledge. So you could go, I think I read this law right, but can you confirm that I'm thinking right? And they do, and they answer the phone. I have never not had help from an IPT member ever. My
Yeah.
entire career of almost 30 years. It's been a phenomenal organization, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Well, the access to the membership information is so worthwhile. I mean,
It is.
it's worth the price of admission, as they say.
Yep.
Just to be a member to have that. So you're absolutely
Yep.
right.
I am. I've just been, well, the list. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, find somebody in this state and call them and see what they think because we're not sure and we're not so sure what the department's going to do. We don't want to call the department, right? This is a questionable thing. What do you guys think? So I've always been found every time I've gone, it's been invaluable. The people that have taught, the community, it's been a wonderful community in America, and we needs to be bigger. So the younger generation gets involved too.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Well, and that's where when I left Big 4, that was one of my biggest concerns when I left kind of that trapping. I was like, "Well, like I'm the first internal state and local tax resource.
Yeah.
I'm still like I'm smart. I know I'm smart, but I can't know everything." And so that was
Mm-mm.
one of the biggest kind of like hurdles I had to overcome was like, "Oh my god, this person's hiring a state and local income tax person for a small firm. They're going to expect me to know everything."
Right.
And again, as smart as I can be, I'm not litigating. I'm not, you know, challenging rules in New York. And so, yeah, that again, going back to that connectivity, this is just another means to kind of bring the people together who think alike and who struggle alike, right?
Well, and different industries
Um,
arise, right? Like transportation is different than food service, than hotels. I mean, there is a wide swath of industry in America. How do we deal with it? How do we tax it? So we need to come together with other people because, of course, we have the supremacy clause in our United States Constitution that allows a lot of kings.
Yeah.
I joke. I mean, we left 1776 so we wouldn't have a king. And now we have like 50 kings plus a bunch of different subordinates that run their own fiefdoms, like the locals. So, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, well, funny what we asked for.